Hey everybody, can you see me? Can you hear me? Sorry that it took me a while to get on here. Some technical difficulties. And I have never done this before because I'm an old man and I don't ever use Facebook. But yeah, welcome. I'm Matthew Emmerich. You should all know me, hopefully. But I am going to be recording this to hopefully put up onto a YouTube channel at some point to kind of just keep for my own benefit. And if people want to watch again sometime, that'd be cool too. But basically, how this is going to work tonight, I'm going to wait a few minutes for people to maybe show up. And if they don't, that's totally cool because I'm just watching Star Wars, which is my favorite movie franchise of all time. And I'm totally cool with that. But basically, a commentary. I was talking with some friends the other day about what a movie commentary is. And I just, since I've worked in the movie industry for a number of years, kind of assumed that everybody knows what it is. But I wish I could get this to... Anyway, yeah, not everybody knows what it is. So movie commentary is basically just when a lot of times you'll see them as bonus features on a DVD or a Blu-ray where the director is there's the wife, the Hylia, where the director is kind of giving feedback on how the scene was constructed, shot, edited, and then nerds like me might do a similar thing where they do a commentary on the film, and as they watch it, they're talking about the stuff that they see. Hey, Leah. Yeah. Your camera, that you want, doesn't seem to be working, I don't think.
What?
So I believe that this camera is the one picking me up, and not the one that you have over here. So just because I'm looking straight at this one.
Yeah, because it switched you to the integrate. Why are you on this? You should be here.
I didn't even touch it.
That should be you. You're still alive.
Okay. Thank you for your patience, everybody. All right, so in one more minute, I'm going to go ahead and push play here and start chatting about Star Wars while I watch some Star Wars. So if you all want to join in and watch too, I'll be watching on Disney Plus, and I'll do like a little countdown and kind of be like 3, 2, 1, play, and hopefully it will be kind of close to, what's up, Matt Brown? Kind of close to the same time that you all are watching your version of Star Wars. I mean, there's definitely room for error here. It's probably not going to match up entirely, but hopefully we can get it kind of close. Yeah, so I'll wait one more minute. What can I say about Star Wars before I actually get this started? So Star Wars was very influential on me in my life growing up as a kid. I was born in the 80s, so I missed it as like when it actually came out. I like to say that I was born in the special edition era. So I think I saw the very first Star Wars movie in my uncle's basement in probably 1995 or something like that. And then when they re-released the original trilogy in 1997, I got to see, we're watching episode 4 tonight, Matt, the very first Star Wars film released in 1977 is what we're watching tonight. So bring that up, y'all. Yeah, so I saw Empire Strikes Back in the theater when it came out, the special edition. And then I think I saw Return of the Jedi at a friend's house. So yeah, just right off the bat, I think the world that George Lucas created was really captivating to me. The characters, obviously, the creatures. Hey, what's up, Jason? How you doing, man? Haven't talked to you in a long time. Yeah, looking forward to reconnecting with these people. Hi, Amos. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? I know there's only like a couple of you on, and again, I'm going to post this on my YouTube channel, which, by the way, the YouTube channel is going to be called Show Me Cinema. So I live in Kansas City, Missouri right now, so Missouri is the Show Me state. So that's going to be the name of my YouTube channel, Show Me Cinema. And I'll throw up, if this goes well, actually, even if this doesn't go well, I'm probably going to end up doing this for the whole Star Wars saga, because saga. Just said saga because that's how George Lucas pronounces it. Saga, I think, is the correct pronunciation, but George Lucas always says saga. So yeah, I'm going to probably watch like all 11 Star Wars releases because we're under quarantine right now and there ain't nothing else to do with our time. So here we go. If you're watching along and you want to follow me and everything I'm saying, I'm about ready to hit play. You all ready? You got your fingers on the trigger? 3, 2, 1, play. And then this always takes about 5 to 10 seconds to watch the whirly thing get started. What's up, Andrew? Andrew is my longtime Star Wars buddy. Saga. Yeah, that's exactly right, Russ. I don't know why George Lucas continues to pronounce it that way, but he does. Yeah, Andrew, so glad to have you here. We are lifelong original trilogy buddies. We might not agree about the sequel trilogy, but OT for sure. Okay, so a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away is up now. To try to get to that point. Star Wars with the iconic John Williams music. I probably do need a clackerboard. Maybe next time, Russ, I will do that. Episode 4, so A New Hope. What's funny is when this movie was released in 1977, it did not have those first 2 lines, right? Because it wasn't episode 4, and A New Hope was not the title of this movie. It simply started with the first sentence. It is a period of civil war. After it became a massive hit, they re-released it. It was either later in 1977 or perhaps 78. And during the re-release in the theaters, George added episode 4 and added A New Hope. But a lot of people didn't realize that A New Hope was the name of this movie because that's not how it was originally released. Of course, when George first sat down to write all 3 of these scripts, it got really bloated. And he was like, whoa, I can't shoot a movie out of this. This is like 1,000 pages. So he divided it into 3 parts. And he was like, okay, I'll just do the first part. And if I can, sometime down the road, I'll do the next 2 and 3 parts. And sure enough, he made a boatload of money. And he made 2 and 3 parts. And all the rest is history. Okay, so this first shot where the camera pans down from the stars to the planet Tatooine was something that they really were worried about. Because these special effects, of course, at the time were revolutionary, right? And they were really concerned that if they couldn't capture the audience with this first shot, the whole movie was going to suffer. But, I mean, as this Star Destroyer is passing above camera, you can sense this imposing doom that it has on the little freighter that Princess Leia is in. And I think that first shot, if you ask a lot of people who saw the movie in 77, remember quite well. So here's our droid friends, 3PO and R2. Here's our rebel soldiers. Right off the bat, we're thrown into this mix, and it just sets a really good pace. A pace that, unfortunately, the prequels never really were able to master. I'm going to do my best not to talk a lot about the other movies, but I'm definitely going to be talking about some of them. C-3PO. I was more of an R2 fan growing up. By the way, in case you missed the intro, I'm going to be talking through this a lot. So if you're not interested in that and you just want to watch the movie, I will not be offended if you turn my voice off. But I feel like I have some fun things to say and add. So 3PO was played by an actor named Anthony Daniels. He's very British. And for a long time, they were going to dub over his lines. That was the original plan. But they brought in all these voice actors to dub 3PO's lines. And at the end of the day, they were like, you know what? Anthony does it quite well. Why don't we just let him do it? So he ended up doing it after all. I have a Star Wars blanket around here somewhere. So here, stormtroopers we see for the first time. I'm going to get my Star Wars blanket. 1 second. And I love how this shot transitions to the next shot with the fog in this corridor just kind of consuming the whole hallway. You'll notice in this first trilogy especially, a lot of the scene transitions are these swipes that George uses. That's the only one I can think of that has fog. But a lot of the times it'll be a swipe from bottom to top, left to right. And here comes Darth Vader, which I think in some language is translated to Dark Father. George Lucas isn't known for his subtlety. Check that out, y'all. All right, so here's our first shot of Carrie Fisher. May she rest in peace. That was a tough one. I don't normally allow myself to be too affected by celebrity deaths, but I was surprised how much that kind of hit me actually when she passed away somewhat unexpectedly. And I think it just goes back to how influential these characters were to me growing up. I love how 3PO has no idea what's going on. And that's why I always preferred R2, because he has all the secrets. I like to think that R2 has a lot of the memories from the prequel trilogy. Okay, so Vader's choking this dude, right? I didn't realize until much later that this guy is Captain Antilles, who the droids refer to later when they talk to Luke, and they're like, our last master was Captain Antilles. It's this guy. But as a kid, I never really put that together. Speaking of voice dubbing, James Earl Jones does the voice of Darth Vader, but he obviously was not the guy in the suit. The actor in the suit is a gentleman by the name of David Prowse, another British actor. And there's some footage of him, because he did the lines on set. So I know somewhere on the internet, on YouTube, you can find footage of David Prowse's British accent in the Darth Vader suit. It's quite fun. You don't see the stun gun much anymore in Star Wars. I think it was on Clone Wars the other day, but the stormtrooper there says, set for stun when they shoot Leia in the back. And that's one of the few times you ever see it. If only those Imperials had shot down that escape pod, then none of this would have happened. I think it's important to remember too that during this time period, there were no movies like this back in the late 70s, or really throughout that whole decade. Country was kind of in a weird spot at the time with Vietnam ending and the whole Watergate scandal. So a lot of the films of the time reflected that. There were a lot of disaster movies. Yeah. So when George decided to do this, and he's been on record to say that he wanted to make a movie for kids because he felt like America didn't have any modern myths, and he was big into myth and folklore and fairy tales. I love how all the Imperials were cast out of Britain. They're all these British actors. I don't know. It makes me, especially the scene later when they're on the Death Star during the the meeting room. It reminds me of something out of a Shakespearean play. Because a lot of those actors were Shakespearean actors. Well, Peter Cushing, the actor who plays Grand Moff Tarkin, he was most well known for playing Dracula back in the 50s. Hi, Kyle. All right, here we are in the desert. A lot of horror stories from the principal photography here in Tunisia. So all the Tatooine stuff on the desert planet was shot in Tunisia, North Africa. And it went bad. The cast and crew were miserable. And you got to bear in mind, I just watched the documentary on Star Wars called Empire of Dreams. I highly recommend it. A lot of the stuff I'm probably regurgitating now comes from that documentary, and it's on Disney Plus as well. But it does a great job of making you kind of remember or imagining what it would be like before Star Wars existed. Like Star Wars is so ingrained in our pop culture now that it's hard to remember life without it. But it does a good job of being like, okay, nobody knew what this thing was going to be. Nobody knew if it was going to be successful. And a lot of the cast and crew did not enjoy their experience, especially in Tunisia. They had a serious rainstorm for like the first time in decades, apparently. And then they also had tremendous heat and humidity. And Mark Hamill, at one point, because they shot all this stuff in Africa and then they shot all the Death Star stuff in London. And he's on record of being like, it felt like a completely different movie set. We went from these terrible circumstances out in the desert to this nice, beautiful L Street studio, which at the time was one of the bigger studios, movie studios in the world to shoot on. Grabbing a pillow. I always love the skeleton of whatever this creature is here that 3PO walks by. And there's the sandcrawler in the distance. A transport. How steady you. Over here! Hey! Hey! I have no idea how to use this Facebook Live stuff, guys. I'm not gonna lie. Jawas. So you will meet a lot of new alien species here. This is part of the stuff, like as a kid seeing it for the first time, like there's a lot of good buildup in these scenes leading up to when we meet Luke Skywalker for the first time. I remember just kind of wondering what was Archie going to do, who is chasing after him right now. These people have glowing eyes. So just really well put together. It's funny too because after all this was shot, George Lucas fired his editor because he did not like the way that it was being edited, and ended up doing a lot of it himself. And then, what's up, Cameron? And then he had his wife help him, a couple other guys, and then that team of 3 people like ended up winning the award, the Academy Award for Best Editing that year. But I remember them saying that part of the problem was like pacing. As they were originally trying to edit it, it was kind of slogging along. And then they decided to just make more cuts and really let the actors' performance and their rhythm and their speed create the final cut. With the Jawas too, I always wondered like what they look like under the mask, right? Like that's the whole point of their character design is like the mystery behind these Jawas. And we'll see too when the Sand People show up later. They're wrapped in those bandages. Like what do they look like underneath those bandages? And I love that it's never, really explained. I think that's part of the appeal of the Star Wars franchise is the mystery. Like the Force, I don't like when they start to try to explain things about the Force, which is part of my disliking of certain things with the Clone Wars TV series. Is they try to start explaining the Force more. I don't mind new Force powers, like I'm cool with that, but a lot of things are better left unknown. Like and like Yoda's species, for example, for all of you Mandalorian fans out there, all you Baby Yoda fans out there, like. We've never known what Yoda's species is, and now that might be happening. So I don't know. I got mixed feelings about it. Serious mixed feelings about it. All right, so R2 has woken up inside of the Sandcrawler. Some other droids. There's the Gonk droid. Basically looks like a moving trash can. Is he going to find a friend in here? Yay, they're reunited. What are the odds? Probably pretty good odds that they're in relatively the same location. There's a huge vehicle filled with Jawas that specifically are out hunting for droids. Okay, this shot was something Special Edition did. Yeah, you see those digital dewbacks in the background. They obviously were not part of the original release in 1977, so this was stuff that was all added in the 90s. The only dewbacks that were in the original cut were big old props that were set way in the back or whatever. I just learned the other day that this little ring that the Stormtrooper finds is supposedly one that came off of C-3PO. Not that it really matters. I guess it's a 50-50 shot. It had to be either R2 or 3PO. Look at these beautiful models, like all those ships and the Sandcrawler. I mean, those are all practical effects, baby. We're doomed. 3PO, always the optimist, right? I also love, let's see, how far in the movie are we? About 16 minutes or so? And we still haven't met our hero. It's just kind of this nice slow burn. The droids, I feel like, really get underutilized later on in, hi Mark, later on in the saga. Yeah, it's especially R2. He gets super sidelined, and it is what it is, but I really would have liked if they'd found something more for them to do. Yeah, so this scene, I think it was one of the harder ones. I mean, they had a lot of issues with all these droids operating properly. R2 could move, but then he couldn't move his head at the same time while he was walking. Or he could move and not move his head. There's our hero. I haven't really talked about the John Williams music much. Maybe I'll talk more about that once we get to the Twin Sons, but that was one of the few things that George Lucas was actually happy and surprised with. I believe he says that it surpassed his expectations. I have no need for a protocol. Of course you have, sir. Not in an environment such as this. That is why I have been programmed. What I really need is a droid who understands the binary language of moisture evaporators. Evaporators? Sir, my first job was programming binary templates. It's very similar to your evaporators in that respect. Can you speak Bakshi? Well, of course I can, sir. It's like a second language. All right, shut up. I'll get to the 3PO and his social skills. And a very young Mark Hamill. I don't think Mark Hamill gets enough credit for his acting ability. The way that you see his character evolve across this trilogy is pretty impressive. I mean, he's super obnoxious and whiny in this movie, but that's intentional. Like, he's being directed that way and making those acting choices. And the character's written that way. I was going up to Tosche Station to pick up some power converters. But, you see him meet some terrible news, shall we say, in The Empire Strikes Back. And then by the time Return of the Jedi comes around, he's really matured into a very different character. It's funny too because Mark Hamill had that accident between the first film and Empire Strikes Back, and the accident really messed up his face. So he looks different physically between those movies, and it just always kind of throws me off. He's got that big scar. Where is it? Harrison has the scar on his chin, so I feel like Mark's might be on the side of his face. When we watch Empire together, I'll have to check it out. Biggs is right. You might have just heard Luke mention Biggs is right. That was supposed to be his best friend, and they shot several scenes of Luke and Biggs hanging out on Tatooine together. But then George decided late in the game that he didn't want to meet Luke until the droids met Luke.
You can call me Luke. I see, Sir Luke. That's just Luke. And I am C-3PO, Human Cyborg Relations. And this is my counterpart, R2D. Hello. You're kind of scoring. You look like you boys seen a lot of action. With all we've been through, sometimes I'm amazed we're in as good position as we are. Or the rebellion war. You know the rebellion against the Empire? That's how we came to be in your service.
So let's talk a little bit about the hero's journey, because George Lucas was really influenced by Joseph Campbell. I know Andrew knows about some Joseph Campbell stuff. His most famous book was A Hero with 1,000 Faces. And Joseph Campbell's theory was that there was a hero archetype that was similar in all cultures, basically. Like there was one myth. He called it the monomyth. With slight variations here or there, but he has all these steps that he outlines, and it's like, I don't know, 10 or 12 steps for the hero's journey. And one of the first ones is Call to Adventure. And this could be considered his call to adventure here, where he comes across the recording. But I think the bigger one is really when Obi-Wan talks to him later in the film and says, "You must learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like your father." But yeah, the few other steps of the hero's journey would be like friends and foes, when the hero meets new friends along the way. The aid from a mentor. And actually, once we get to the sequel trilogy, I have a lot of cool things to say about that and the character of Rey, but that'll be several days away, I think.
Sounds like she's in trouble. I better play back the voice, baby.
We haven't talked about the actor in R2, because there is a little dude in there. An actor by the name of Kenny Baker. He performed in vaudeville and performances like that. He's a little person, I don't know, 3 or 4 feet tall, because they needed somebody in there to move him around, I guess. Now, once we got to the sequel trilogy, they didn't really need anybody in there anymore, because they just operated it all remotely. But one of my favorite stories is that he would be in there, and then everybody would break for lunch, and he would be left there all by himself. I was like, that's terrible. Also, the two of them did not get along in real life, 3PO and R2, the actors Kenny and Anthony, which is a huge bummer because they have such good chemistry on screen, even though R2 is just speaking through a series of beeps and whistles. I love these two actors too that play Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. It's funny because like George didn't tell them the whole backstory about Darth Vader, and yet with these looks that they have with one another, like it says a lot. Blue milk. That's what Luke be drinking there. If you go to Galaxy's Edge, by the way, the theme park at Disneyland or Disney World, you can buy some blue milk.
Good morning. I walked up there on the South Ridge working on those. Yes.
I'm always curious about food in the Star Wars galaxy.
And if these new droids do work out, I want to try to get my application to the Academy this year. You mean the next semester with Harvest? Sure, there's more than enough droids. Harvest is what I need for the most.
And the flowers that are out there behind Uncle Owen. Like nowadays, everything like that would be digitally created, and it would be very otherworldly, right? Biggs is mentioned again. Looks like I'm going nowhere. What a broody teenager. You gotta feel for the guy though. Look at those flowers. I love it. I always find new things every time I watch this movie. For whatever reason, the flowers have never stuck out to me, but they are today. He's got too much of his father in him. That's what I'm afraid of. See, I don't think these actors knew that his father was the Dark Lord. Spoiler. Here we go, John Williams. Iconic theme. And it's wild to think that we're never really going to hear a John Williams score behind a Star Wars movie again. I'll never see a opening crawl again. Because it seems like Disney's going to be going in a totally different direction. Of course, John Williams is like, he's got to be pushing 90 at this point. So, and I don't know how much of his scores are actually him either. All right, so Luke's coming back, looking for the droids, and what has happened? Sure enough, R2 has run away.
That R2 has always been a problem. These astro droids are getting quite out of hand. Even I can't understand their logic at times. He's so stupid. He's nowhere in sight. Pardon me, sir. Couldn't we go up? It's too dangerous with all the sand. We'll have to wait until morning. Oh, turn the power down. All right, I'll be there in a few minutes. Get it.
This is one of the few locations that appears in all three trilogies, actually. Although, I don't think they actually went to Tunisia for the sequel trilogy. From what I understand, that was all shot in the studio. It's amazing what they can do now. Like when you look, if you haven't looked at any of the behind the scenes stuff for The Mandalorian, it's mind blowing. All of that is done in a studio on an LED screen. It's wild. Here's more food in Star Wars.
Did you take those two droids with him?
I think so.
There's like a root on the table on the countertop. I don't know what this food processor thing is. So this stuff has been a little bit modified with the special editions and stuff too, because with that land speeder, I mean, it was literally just a car thing. I mean, it had wheels, and so to hide the wheels, they put like Vaseline over, I don't know if it was the lens or the film itself. I'm an actor, I'm not a director, special effects guy. These banthas, these creatures that the sand people are riding, were actual elephants. That's a fun fact. Hey Elizabeth, thanks for the like.
No, it's all right. I think we better go. What's wrong with that? There are several creatures approaching us from the southeast. And worse. Come on, let's have a look.
Yeah, and they changed some stuff here too. Thanks, Kurt. Because Luke has a line about, I can see one of them now. There didn't used to be a sand person coming around that bantha. Okay, here's an interesting edit moment. So you have the fight director here who is in this costume shaking the gaffy stick, right? When they actually shot it, he only raises it once. But as they tried to continue to add more immediacy to the final cut, the editors had him rock it back and forth a couple times. Here's another weird thing the special edition added. R2's hiding behind this rock, right? This is one of the worst ones that George Lucas added. That rock was digitally put in to hide more of R2-D2. This sound that Obi-Wan makes has been changed multiple times. Gosh, that rock is bad. Now that I know that it's fake, it sticks out like a sore thumb to me. And here's the great Sir Alec Guinness. He was the only real name talent on this set.
Hello there. Come here, my little friend. Don't be afraid.
They just really decided to cram R2 back behind that rock. So silly. And of course, for some reason, Obi-Wan doesn't remember R2-D2. I guess it's been 20 years. He hasn't aged very gracefully, has he? His hair does some very interesting things throughout this movie. What a class act, though. Everybody, whenever you watch documentaries about the cast, they all have such nice things to say about Alec. Because while everybody else was kind of griping and complaining, he was the constant professional throughout all this. Hey, Parker. Obi-Wan.
Now that's a name I've not heard long time. I think my uncle knows him. He said he was dead.
Of course, we're so used to calling him Obi-Wan Kenobi, it's weird for me to call him Ben Kenobi.
Well, of course I know him. It's me.
R2, you know that that's him, right?
Obi-Wan.
Has he really aged that much?
Well, the droid does worry. Don't seem to remember it was only the droid. Very interesting. I think we better get indoors.
For me to call him Ben Kenobi. R2, you know that that's him, right? Has he really aged that much? Leave page. No, stay on this page.
I must have taken a bad step. Can you stand without a light with Sandy?
Ben Kenobi.
You go on, Master. There's no sense in you risking yourself of my
Ah!
I've done
Leah! You know that that's him. Help me! Right? Has he really aged that much? Leave page. No, stay on this page. What did I do?
Just stay on this page.
But this isn't the live one right now. Is
Yeah,
it?
it is. You're live right now.
No, it's not. This is delayed. This is. See? Help me!
You're now watching the live video. The broadcast and other viewers can see that you're watching too.
Technical difficulties.
Hit
What did I
pause.
do?
Hit
On
pause.
what?
On the movie. Hold on. I don't think you're streaming anymore.
But this isn't the live one right now. Is
Yeah,
it?
it is. You're live right now.
No, it's not. This is delayed. This is. See? Help me! Do you want
You're
to
now
come over
watching
here?
the live video. The broadcast and other viewers can see that you're watching too.
Technical difficulties. Okay, so it's like delayed.
Just hit
On
pause.
what?
On the movie. Hold on. I don't think you're streaming anymore.
But
Yeah,
this
it's
isn't
just
the live one.
I don't know why it's.
What if
Hold
I
on,
hit go
hold on.
back? So what I did was I clicked on somebody who commented on my thing.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Okay, well I didn't know that. So if I hit the arrow, you're live at the same time. We can hear both the delay and live. Dang it.
Okay, hold on.
Thanks, Rebecca.
I don't know why it's.
I think we need to leave this
Video
page.
and-
So what I did was I clicked on somebody who commented on my thing.
Okay, we'll just
Yeah, I didn't know
start
that.
from
So
here on a
I
second.
hit the arrow.
We'll just start a
You're
second
live at the
live
same
and
time.
we'll
We can
push
hear
together
both
the
the
two.
delay and live. I don't understand that, but whatever. If it's gonna
Let's end this live and then start a new one just from this point. So we'll just end this one, save it, and then do part
I think
two.
we need to leave this. Whatever you want to do. I can make it.
That's gonna be the easiest thing. Okay. Oh wait, now maybe you can. Huh.
So yeah, I'm still going.
Yeah, you're still going.
Yeah, I just had to hit live. Okay, so sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, they've changed the way that they do. Yeah, you can't click on anything here. Yeah, they've changed the way that lives work. Sorry about that, everybody.
Oh man. All right, so I paused the movie. My bad. I am right now. They're in Obi-Wan Kenobi's home. Let's see if I push play now. I'll let you guys catch up to me. I'll kind of tell you where I'm at. Obi-Wan says, "I have something for you." He opens the chest. Your father wanted you to have this, but your uncle wouldn't allow it. He figured you might follow old Obi-Wan on some diplomatic crusade. Oh man, I feel so bad about that, guys. Technical difficulties. See, I said in my little note thing on the invitation that this could go very badly, and I don't think it's gotten so badly. Rebecca, is everything working well now? Can I get a confirmation from everybody that we're in a better spot? Why wasn't Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru an action figure? That is a great question, Kurt.
It looks good in here.
Thanks, babe. Dude, I got a lot of action figures of a lot of these characters, but they never did do an Uncle Owen. Troy, Mecca, how did I miss all of these comments earlier? Arla, we should be watching you from behind the Mystery Science Theater. These are great, guys. I don't know how I missed all these awesome comments. Okay, thanks, Rebecca. I'm good. All right, so it's still rolling. Here we are. The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. This is the only explanation you really need about the Force right here. Let Alec Guinness do what he does and explain it. And now we get to see Carrie Fisher's little recording again. You big stuff. I hope everybody's caught up. Man, I feel bad about that. I'm going to have to just do this again sometime. That way I can mess up all my errors, right? Sorry, Becca. You were perfectly in place with me at the time, right? Bummer. So right now we're watching Princess Leia give her message. Yeah, it's not the same without her. I personally am glad JJ found a way to use that footage for Ep9. And I know I'm not going to talk about the sequel trilogy a whole lot, but it was pretty seamless. I mean, I could tell moments where he grabbed specific looks that were also used in Force Awakens, but that's because I watch Force Awakens a lot. But for the most part, it's pretty good. So here's his call to adventure. Will Luke go and become a Jedi or not? You must do what you feel is right. Oh, that line is later.
How am I ever going to explain this? Learn about the Force. I can take you as far as Anchorage. You can get a transport here, and most likely wherever you're going. You must do what you feel is right, of course.
All right, so now we're in Imperial space. This is the first time we see the Death Star. And here's that scene that I was kind of talking about earlier with all these British actors.
Dangerous to your Starfleet, Commander, not to this battle station.
That guy doesn't really have an accent that much. Yeah, see, when I was a kid, I didn't like this scene because I thought it was boring, a bunch of old guys sitting around talking. But now, as I'm older, like this is probably some of the better writing George Lucas has done, or maybe it's just so well acted by Peter Cushing and these other guys.
Municipal governments now have direct control of the intelligence. Fear will keep the local systems in line. Fear of this battle station.
And what of the rebellion? If the rebels have obtained a complete technical readout of the station,
This character here with the funny haircut, he's a big part of the Darth Vader comic that I recently read.
any attack made by the rebels against this station would be a useless gesture, no matter what technical data they've obtained.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Were people able to get back on sync?
The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force.
Don't try to frighten us with your sorcerer's ways, Lord Vader. Your
Sad devotion to that ancient religion.
does not help you conjure up
The stolen data tapes. Like what? These are great lines. Or giving you clairvoyance enough to, and then here comes the choke. And I once read an interview about this actor who did the whole choke thing.
Disturbing.
enough of this. Vader.
Of course, they did several takes of this, and I mean, I think he does a pretty superb job. Yeah, I used to subscribe to the Star Wars Insider. Hi, Julie. Say hi to Ben for me. Yeah, when I was a kid, I would get like this monthly magazine, Star Wars Insider, and they would have interviews from all these random actors and guys that were in the suits. And of course, then when I was an adult and living in LA, I went to the Star Wars Celebration, which is the big convention that they do every year. I think it's an annual thing. I've only ever been once. But I got an autograph from the guy who was in the Admiral Akbar suit. And that was cool. Mark Hamill has 8 toes on his left foot? Sheesh. Now I'm learning new trivia and stuff. I don't think that's a true fact.
If they traced the robots here, they may have learned who they sold them to, not leaving back home.
Uh-oh, Luke. It's too dangerous. I love that Ben says, wait, it's too dangerous, but then doesn't make any attempt to, like, run after him. He just stands there and watches Luke get in his speeder. Now, this was the most terrifying moment as a kid, watching these dead corpses. Like, I just imagined the mom or his aunt and uncle climbing up out of the house. It's pretty graphic when you're a kid. It's still weird, like these charred bodies. Anyway, I won't talk about charred bodies for much longer, I promise. John Williams music. I also love how the wind is blowing. Like, look at this reaction shot, though. Again, people got to give Mark credit. He didn't ever rise to the superstardom that Harrison did, but he's a good actor. All right, now we're gonna see Carrie Fisher again. Hey Rebecca, did you get time back up, or did you give up on it?
Now, Your Highness, we will discuss the location.
This probe droid was really freaky as a kid too, because I knew that it was like torturing her somehow, but I didn't know how. And it zooms in on this little needle, which is part of the drug torture. I don't know. But I think that goes back to like the less you see, the more your imagination makes up creepy things. So like with the Hitchcock films, like with Psycho, you never really see the knife go into anybody's back or anything like that. You just see the shot of the hand and the knife in the hand, or the shot of the drain at the bottom of the tub. Because your imagination always ends up making up scarier things than what you might see on screen anyway. So it looks like in the time that Luke was gone, the droids have put together all the little Jawa carcasses.
Droids will now be in the hands of the Empire.
That's nice of them. They just kind of hung out and waited for Luke to come back and realize what had happened. I wonder if Obi-Wan had an idea that, like, did he have a premonition that the stormtroopers were invading the homestead? And if so, like, why didn't he mention that to Luke? And be like, I think your family might be in trouble there, Luke Skywalker. All right, we're headed to Mos Eisley. This shot of them standing up on the cliff was something that Ralph McQuarrie, the concept artist for Star Wars, first drew. Okay, I want to talk about Ralph McQuarrie a lot, but I got to talk about this stuff that they added a lot in the special edition. So the idea that George wanted was to really just make it a bigger scope, right? Add more busyness, which, all right, that's fair. I like some things that are added throughout this and others not so much. We have the big beast that's called a Ronto with the Jawas. And then I don't really love the Ronto that takes up the entire frame. And here we see Obi-Wan using the Force for the first time, yeah? To manipulate these dumb troopers, the weak-minded. Meanwhile, Luke's just sitting there like, wait, what? I love, too, that R2 is on his back. On the back of that speeder. I'm hoping the little actor was not in that speeder at the time. More digital Rontos. More digital ships flying in the background.
I can't understand how we got by those troops. I thought we were dead.
Force can have a strong influence on the weak minded.
Ooh, you know what I just thought of? I could probably look at the exact time. So yeah, I'm at 44:36. If you all are watching on Disney Plus with me, here I'll give you another time stamp if you're ready. 44:49. I don't know if that's helpful. Okay, so Cantina. This was a huge disappointment for them when they first shot it, because a lot of these costumes were like werewolf. For example, that has been changed out. That weird looking lizard guy that's smoking something, a hookah, whatever, that didn't used to be that alien. It was a werewolf guy. I think the praying mantis is still, oh yeah, I saw him in the background. There's the devil, which he made it to the final cut. But yeah, a lot of these costumes were a little lackluster, and Mark Hamill, he has a funny comment in the documentary where he's like, yeah, it ended up, when I walked in, I thought it was going to be really bad. And George came over and was like, we're going to fix all this. We're going to fix it all. There's a Greedo. All right, so this guy with he looks like he's got a butt mouth. You know who I'm talking about. Character's name is Ponda Baba. He's going to get his arm sliced off here in a second. You'll notice before his arms get sliced off, his hand is a hoof. But then when his arm lands on the ground, it's a furry clawed hand. Continuity stuff. I find it fun to catch like little movie mistakes. So yeah, there he shoved Luke with a hoof.
He doesn't like you. Sorry. I don't like you either. You just watch yourself.
Spoiler. Oh, with the arm? Is that what you're talking about, Andrew?
Well, sister, I'll be careful. You'll be dead. This little one's not worth the effort. Don't let me get you some.
And here we get the first shot of a lightsaber. And now you look at his arm, it's a furry hand. And there's blood. So that's the only time in the whole Star Wars saga that you see a lightsaber leave blood, because this was before Lucas decided that a lightsaber cut would cauterize the wound. I'm kind of surprised that they never changed that. That's an awesome update, Mark. I hope your little boys are having a good night. So, Andrew, were you able to catch up to where I'm at? Can I get somebody to confirm that it wasn't absolutely terrible to try to catch up to where I was after I screwed it up? Han Solo. All right, so this character, not only my favorite character in Star Wars, but my favorite character of all time, of any movie ever. I was obsessed and am still am obsessed with Han Solo. Harrison Ford, unfortunately, was not as big of a fan of the character as I was, which I think is part of the reason why he got killed off like a schmuck. I'm gonna grab another pillow, y'all. Harrison was kind of a name talent actor. He had done a movie or two before. He actually did George's previous film called American Graffiti. And he was helping George. Hi, Ben. Harrison Ford was helping George with auditions, right? So he was the reader with all the kids coming in to read for Luke and Leia. And he never actually auditioned for Han Solo, but George didn't like anybody else that was auditioning for Han Solo. And I guess Harrison's read finally won him over because he was in the room, you know, audition after audition, not actually being the one auditioning, but reading for the actor. And he finally got the part. I always wondered here, how did they escape this table? Like, that's a matter of seconds that Luke and Obi-Wan leave that table. And I also love that Han is just staring them down. I think somehow I switched over to the crummier camera that I have. Oh, here we go. Let's switch to this. Yeah, that camera quality should be better. Here's Greedo. Okay, so here comes the infamous Who Shot First scene, which they've changed multiple times. Is that how Harrison Ford won the role, Ben? I didn't know that. Okay, so for those of you who may not be familiar, which I don't know how you couldn't, but in the original version, Han Solo clearly shoots Greedo first. Then, somewhere I think around the 90s at these special editions, Greedo shot first. George Lucas changed it because he didn't want Han Solo to be like a cold-blooded killer, which sort of makes sense, but it also doesn't because we want to see Han's character arc, right? We want to see him evolve. And then now they've got it like right at the same time. Oh, I missed the McClunky. Anybody know about McClunky? So apparently in the new Disney Plus version, this is the first time ever, there's an extra line that Greedo has. And he says, McClunky. And the internet lost their minds when they figured this out. Because, of course, the internet loses their minds over everything. My hair is funny. Han shot first. Yeah, you would say that. No, I think that's the better choice because it does allow you to see his character evolution.
What do you mean?
I think it is time we demonstrated the full power of this concept.
Now what is Ben saying to me? I love that the stormtroopers, oh, it's locked. I guess we'll just go to the next door. Easy like that. Oh, you like my hair. Thanks, Julie. So when I lived in LA, my neighbor was part of the 501st. So for those of you who aren't huge Star Wars nerds like this guy, the 501st is basically a fan club who make Stormtrooper armor. And to a lesser extent, bounty hunter armor, or maybe Darth Vader armor. But I would see him outside on the patio, like shining up his Stormtrooper armor all the time. And McClunky. And at one point, I finally got up the guts to go over and pick his brain about it. Okay, so this scene here with Jabba the Hutt. Sorry. I like this scene. I do. What I don't like is the digital Jabba. And I don't like him digitally in the prequels either. I love Return of the Jedi Jabba. That massive puppet is the best. So I tried to just kind of like imagine that this digital version looks like the puppet version in Jedi, and that somehow makes it a little bit better. Because it's a fun scene. Harrison Ford does great. You know, he steps on the tail here, which they had to do because when they shot this, it was originally an actor, and of course Harrison could physically walk behind Jabba. So they had to digitally lift up Harrison so he could step on the tail and then cross the other way around. He was a Scottish actor. That's right. The actor who originally played Jabba in this scene was a tubby guy, tubby Scotsman. Another cool thing about this scene is we see Boba Fett for the first time. Here he is. Look at that guy. So when this scene didn't make it into the original 1977 release, we of course didn't know who Jabba or Boba Fett were. And it wasn't until Empire where we saw Boba Fett. And then Jedi when we saw Jabba. Okay, so this guy with the snout, his name's Garindan. And he's the spy. This was another Ralph McQuarrie. So concept art. Let me explain that to y'all real quick. George had a really hard time explaining to producers and studios what this movie was about, right? So he hired this gentleman by the name of Ralph McQuarrie to do a lot of concept art. So basically George would explain a scene to him. One of them, for example, is these characters coming in to look at the Millennium Falcon for the first time. And then Ralph would draw it. And George would be like, don't hold back. Don't worry about what we can and can't do financially. Just draw this scene. And Ralph was really good at drawing ships and machinery and stuff. And, of course, concept art is something that's used throughout all films. But Ralph's was amazing. And I think that's what really ended up selling the whole idea to Fox. There's the chessboard. Now we're in the Millennium Falcon. That is a digital shot of the Falcon leaving Tatooine that was added later, of course. Thanks, Joe. I'm going to figure this Facebook Live thing out. Come hell or high water. All right, Han, get us out of this mess. Let's talk about Peter Mayhew for a second, shall we? So Chewbacca is played by a gentleman named Peter Mayhew, who sadly passed away last year, I think. And his health was real bad for a long time. Sweetheart of a guy. And I think he brings this really interesting gentleness to Chewbacca that we're missing with the new guy. I like the new guy, Jonas, I believe is his name. The new guy is bulkier, like he was an athlete. And he's fine, but he kind of lacks the gentle giant aspect of of Peter Mayhew's performance. And here we see Lightspeed for the first time. My wife is complimenting me. Thanks, Leah. Thanks. All right. Now Leia is coming on. That was funny. I just talked to my wife Leah, and now Princess Leia is entering the set. That's an interesting thing to bring up, is that George had no preference on how people pronounced names. Was it Leah? Was it Leia? Was it Han? Was it Han? Is it Chewbacca? Is it Chewbacca? No, what's the other one? Chewbacca? I don't know. Needless to say, he was like, however you want to pronounce it is good, which I actually kind of like, because some of the names in the Star Wars universe are so ridiculous. And especially for somebody like me who's read a lot of the expanded universe novels, I'm like, I don't know how to pronounce this name. I'm going to just make it up and roll with it. Fun note about this scene. So Carrie Fisher was studying in London at the time. And because of that, like, she kind of fell into this British accent. Governor Tarkin, I smelled your stench when I was brought on board. And she makes fun of herself about that a lot in future interviews.
Where is the rebel base?
I always thought this was brilliant when I was a kid. It was like, oh, she lied about where the rebel base was? I never would have thought of that. It blew my little 10-year-old mind. So we're going to see her home planet blown up. I'm kind of bummed that we never got to see Alderaan really on screen for an extended period of time. It gets maybe like, 40 seconds in episode 3. And that's about it. Now we're back on the Falcon. Luke's training, and Obi-Wan senses the Force.
There's a great disturbance in the force, as if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror, and suddenly silenced. It is something terrible.
Well, you forget your trouble with those imperial slugs. I told you I'd outrun.
How can you not love this Han Solo character, man? Don't everyone thank me at once.
Now be careful, Archie.
This scene's just a really good way to kind of see these characters bond, which is important. Like, we need these quiet moments during busy blockbuster films. Wookiees are known to do that. I mean, look at that. Peter Mayhew. The whole arms over the head thing. Yeah, I think some of the quieter moments in the sequel trilogy actually are more effective. Like the stuff with Poe and Zori Bliss, I really like in Episode 9. I know I said I wasn't going to talk a lot about the sequel trilogy, but yeah. And then the prequels just are a hot mess. But we'll talk about those later.
Wookiee religion, an ancient weapon, no match for a good blaster. Yet I've flown from one side of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff, but I've never seen anything that should make me believe there's one all-powerful force controlling everything. There's no mystical energy field controls my destiny. It's all about simple tricks and nonsense.
Harrison Ford's V-neck, it's like down to mid-chest. Let all that chest hair just let it out, Harrison.
With the blast shield down, I can't even see.
So, okay, one more thing about Episode 9. For those of you who've seen it, there's a flashback sequence where Luke and Leia are training, and they both have those helmets on with the blast shields down. So it's kind of a fun callback. He's just so charismatic. Something too about the lightsabers, real quick. Originally, George Lucas's idea was that they were going to be held like broadswords, right? 2 hands on the hilt at all times. And then, slowly but surely, we see one hand in, like, I think in Empire, there's a shot where Luke just has it with one hand. In Return of the Jedi, even more. And then once you get the prequels, dudes are flipping, and it's like behind the back, and Darth Maul's got it. Yeah, and it just kind of goes crazy. But originally, and throughout this whole movie, it's 2 hands on the hilt. Ben Sonic.
I'm trying to tell you, kid, it ain't there. It's totally blown away.
Destroyed by the Empire.
Entire Starfleet couldn't destroy the whole planet. They thought the ship with more firepower than I.
There's not a ship coming in.
Okay, I gotta point out something about Obi-Wan's costume that has always annoyed me. On his sleeve, there's like a huge faded patch. Do you see it there on the right? I mean, they obviously knew that was there, right? It just, I can't not see it. This is a pretty big screen, so depending on what you're watching on, maybe you can't tell.
Well, you ain't gonna be around long enough to tell anybody about us.
A lightsaber switchblade would be pretty cool. But did they not have enough fabric to make this poor man's costume? Like he's your only name talent, and you can't get the guy a costume that is like doesn't have a huge hole in it. Chewie. There's some great behind the scenes footage too of all of them in there while like the grips are shaking this cockpit. And I mean the younger guys are just goofing around on set all the time, Mark and Harrison. And Alec Guinness is just poised throughout. The other guys would be like joking around like in the cockpit. But not Guinness. All right, Mouse Droid, another really cool droid. A lot of these shots of the Falcon are matte paintings. So before you could paint stuff digitally on a computer, of course, it was like a legitimate painting that was inserted into the frame or the film. I always wondered where those stormtroopers are coming from when they get like lifted up. Like what's downstairs?
No one on board, sir. According to the log, the crew abandoned ship right after takeoff. It must be a decoy, sir. Several of the escape pods have been jettisoned.
Did you find any drugs?
No, sir. If there were any on board, they must also have been.
Send a scanning crew aboard. I want every part of this ship charged.
Yes, sir.
I sense something. A presence I've not felt since.
Getting a scanning crew in here on the double.
Since when? I love how Vader just a presence I've not felt since ... What? And then abruptly walks away. This is another fun reveal. I love that Alec Guinness gets his own compartment And Han, Luke, and Chewie are all crammed down there. Look at that man scratching his Wookiee's head. Chewbacca was always supposed to be kind of like a pet dog. I think that's where George Lucas got the original ideas. He's like riding in his vehicle, his car at the time, and he had his lab sitting in the co-pilot seat or whatever dog it might have been, and that's how Chewbacca came to be. Originally, they were considering different alien types of species for Chewie. Like he was green at one point, or maybe Han was going to be green at one point. I mean, there were all kinds of changes in the script that happened over time. Luke's original name was Luke Starkiller, which when Force Awakens came out in 2015, they named the new Death Star Starkiller Base. So that was kind of a reference to Luke's first name. Why is the Falcon so dirty all the time? Well, Han Solo and Chewbacca, not the most cleanly of chaps. That's one thing that bothered me about the Solo movie is like it was too clean. I always liked that the Star Wars universe was very lived in. It had like this filmy dirt on the surface at all times. And here's our heroes in the stormtrooper armor.
We found the computer outlet, sir.
Okay, you should be able to test the entire material then.
I can just like imagine Mark landing this job, be like, well, I think it could be cool, but it could not be anything. Like they had no idea what kind of massive success this was going to be. I remember Kenny Baker, the actor who plays R2, at one point saying crew members were saying stuff like, "This is really silly," just like snide comments about how dumb the whole process was.
Be patient. Stay and watch over the droid. They must be delivered safely or our star system will suffer the same fate as all of them. Your destiny lies among the paths of life. The Force will be with you. Always.
And this is the last time Luke gets to talk to Obi-Wan. It's interesting, too, how quickly he has bonded to Obi-Wan. I think perhaps since he lost his... Yeah, Ben is a great man. At the beginning of the movie, weren't you saying that he was a crazy... I mean, I guess that was your uncle calling him a crazy... something or other, old wizard. Crazy old man.
I'm afraid I'm not quite sure, sir. He says I found her and keeps repeating she's here.
That a boy, R2. The real hero of the Star Wars universe.
She's here? Princess. Where is she? Princess, what's going on? Level 5, detention box AA-23. I'm afraid she's scheduled to be terminated. No. We've got to do something. Talk.
Yes, Aaron, I am planning on doing a live commentary on all of these. For the exact reason that you said. There ain't nothing else going on, man. Yeah, and for those of you who weren't here earlier, my thought is that I will upload these to YouTube later. Maybe not this one because it hasn't gone completely flawless. But the nice thing about once it's on YouTube is you can speed it up. So if you don't actually want to watch the movie while I'm chatting, you can just listen to all my fun facts at like 2 times the speed. You got it, bro.
What?
More wealth than you can imagine.
I don't know. I can imagine quite a bit.
I better. You will.
All right. You better be right about this.
All right.
What's your plan?
Just another great bonding scene between these two characters. We get to watch this friendship develop.
Okay. Now, I'm going to do these on you.
Bad idea, Luke.
No worries, Chewie. I think I know what he has in mind.
Master Luke, pardon me for asking, but what should R2 and I do if it is scattered here?
Lock the door and hope they don't have blasted.
That isn't very reassuring.
Good stuff. But coming up on one of my favorite scenes in this whole movie, when Harrison Ford has to BS his way through a phone conversation. At one point, I knew what Chewbacca's costume was made of. I think it's like yak fur, if I remember correctly. But yeah, apparently it was very hot, which would not be fun unless you're shooting scenes on Hoth at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back. I love that little moment where Han is like, "No, we're full in this elevator, bro. You got to go to the next one. Sorry about it." It's interesting too with Obi-Wan. Apparently, George was considering a couple different options for casting that role because he was a big Kurosawa fan of Kurosawa films. He was thinking about casting a Japanese actor because it's kind of like the samurai mentor, but that ended up not happening. This is the best scene. Thing. 1138. So that's a reference to George Lucas's first film ever, called THX 1138, which was a very experimental psychological thing. I've not seen it, so I don't know anything about it, but apparently it was good enough to get a lot of attention from people, mostly his professors and stuff. I believe he did it as a student film, and then he did it later as a full-length feature. Hey, Daniel. Chewie doesn't seem to know how to work the Stormtrooper blaster as well as he does crossbows. I don't think he's shooting with his crossbow there. Okay, here's my favorite moment when Han rips off his helmet and starts talking to whoever's on the other line.
Everything's under control. Situation normal. What happened? It's like weapons malfunction, but everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
Harrison does so good. We're fine. We're all fine here. How are you? And then, of course, the next logical step is to just shoot it. Shoot the console, Han. That'll help. Can you see the light on my face? I think it might be my actual lighting source here that's like blinking. Maybe it is the TV. I don't know. Still working out the lights and cameras and stuff here. Hey, that's your sister. Spoiler. I'm here to rescue you. So apparently George Lucas had to explain to Princess Leia that there's no underwear in space, and he wouldn't let her wear a bra. So they like taped her down instead, which doesn't make any sense. And I also would like to ask Natalie Portman if he said the same thing to her when he shot the prequel trilogy.
The Jedi are extinct. The thought is
Poor Carrie. She's in a white costume. Pretty soon she's going to be in that trash compactor all wet and gross.
Princess, with all sections on alert.
Obi-Wan is here. The Force is with him.
You're right. He must not be allowed to escape.
Escape is not his plan. I must face him alone.
Uh-oh. There's going to be a confrontation between Vader and Kenobi. recently I've done some thinking about like what is Star Wars to me? Like what defines a Star Wars movie? Kind of before Episode 9 was released, I did a lot of thinking like that to kind of prepare myself for what I wanted to see. And I think this scene here, where the three of them are all united for the first time, is one that really kind of encapsulates Star Wars. And it's about friends, right? It's about this friendship, and it's about family. Of course, Luke and Leia don't know that they're family yet, but so much of this story is about Luke discovering who his father is, discovering who his sister is. And just the instant banter between them is beautiful. I'd like to see how far of a jump that actually was for Peter Mayhew to make. That's awesome that you can see those explosions and stuff on the wall. What an incredible smell. You see, his sarcasm is just brilliant. Could have used a little bit more of that in the sequel trilogy. Now, I've never been able to really find much information about how they shot this scene, because there's obviously some sort of water underneath there. So they must have shot it in a tank of some kind. The monster freaked me out, though.
It's worse.
It's worse.
That's your imagination. Something just went past my leg.
So when this monster, it's called a Dianaga, when he pops up with the eyeball, you'll notice now it's a digital eyeball. But it definitely was not a digital eyeball. Originally, that was something else that was added. There it is. All the sound in here, to see like the sounds of the water, of course the blasters. The sound designer for Star Wars is a guy by the name of Ben Burtt. You can find a lot of cool information about how he recorded sounds of various animals to get Chewie's grunts and groans, and like the sound of Darth Vader breathing is like a scuba mask or something. He like put a microphone down a scuba breather thing. I don't know what those are called. I got a bad feeling about this. That's a line that is said in, I think, almost every movie. I'm getting kind of tired of hearing it used. It's a little overused at this point, but not overused in this movie because it's the first one. This freaked me out as a kid. Getting smashed with a bunch of trash. No, thank you. Oh, I missed the stormtrooper bumping his head. It was right there. So yeah, that moment when those 6 guys or whatever enter the room to find the droids, It's like the third stormtrooper in goes boom, hits his head on the door, and then he stops and kind of like has to adjust his helmet while the rest of them march in front of him.
Come on.
Never underestimate a droid.
Circuit is my counterpart here. If you don't mind, I'd like to take him down to maintenance.
All right.
I wonder how effective that poll would have been if 3PO hadn't have turned off the trash compactor. Aaron, this comment is hilarious. That is hilarious. That sounds like something your brother would do. They all died in the trash compactor? That's ridiculous.
Where could they be? You said calmly. Oh my. I forgot.
How could you forget you turned it off? You had one job, 3PO. Well, I guess the poll is totally gone now, so that didn't really help too much, did it, Han Solo? See, you gotta keep 3PO and R2 together. They were just separated too much for the rest of the movies, like in the prequel and sequels. This is great. They're dying, R2. Great use of humor. George really does do a good job of writing in this movie, which I think since he had more time leading up to it and wasn't rushed or under the same amount of pressure to write for the next, well, of course, for Empire and Jedi, he provided story treatments, but he didn't do the screenplay. This is the only one that he fully wrote and directed himself until the prequels. Once the prequels rolled around, I think he just got too invested in the CGI aspects of filmmaking, and it got out of control. And he was surrounded by a lot of people who were yes men. Nah, I'm kind of afraid to tell him no or be like, George, maybe this isn't a good idea. One thing too that I thought about today, because apparently on the set of this movie, a reoccurring note that George Lucas gave to the cast was faster and more intense. And they would make fun of him all the time. They'd be like, George, that's all you got? Faster and more intense? But then, once you get to the prequels, nothing is fast and nothing is intense. I'll get to that once we suffer through those movies, but it's just the lack of urgency in all three of those films is a huge problem. So I don't know where along the way he forgot that direction. Classic Han and Leia. And of course, they were having an affair at the time. Carrie Fisher wrote all about that in her book before she passed away. Like literally months before she died, she released that book that spilled all the beans about her and Harrison Ford. Because he was married. He was 35 at the time. He was married, and she was 19. And she was kind of a hot mess, and he was a handsome but very stoic older man. And they had a relationship, and it was weird, and it was a secret to everyone. I don't think, I'm sure Mark found out eventually, but yeah, I always kind of wonder if Mark had a crush on Carrie. Anybody know any info about that? That would be interesting. It's them. Blast them. I love, yay, thanks for the like, Douglas. He doesn't like being called Doug. Instead of just blasting them, the stormtrooper takes the time to say, "It's them. Blast them." Classic Han Solo. So this stunt, there's a fun story about this. By this point in the process of shooting the film, they were way over budget. They were way over time, and they didn't have like the proper stuntmen to perform this stunt of the actors swinging from one side of the bridge to the other. So they were just like, well, we'll teach Mark and Carrie how to do it. They'll be fine. We'll harness them in. They'll be just fine. So this is actually them swinging across, which when you compare this to like stunts that you see in action movies today, it's not really that exciting. But for the time, it was cool. And I also just think about moments when I was out in LA on movie sets where we were doing things that were like, this doesn't feel like the safest idea, but we don't have any stunt people, and this is not a union film, so we want to get paid our measly $100 a day, so we're going to do it and hopefully not get injured. Good luck. Kiss your brother. See, that kiss doesn't bother me too much, though, because it's kind of on the cheek. But the kiss in the next movie, Planet Hoth, I got you, Douglas. Yeah, the kiss in the next movie is like gross. I mean, they don't know that they're siblings, but ugh, there's like tongue and everything. Han Solo barely jumps through those blast doors before they shut all the way. There's just like a lot of funny little clever things in these action sequences that I really enjoy. Okay, so here comes the epic lightsaber duel between Vader and Obi-Wan, right? Alec Guinness, I forget how old he is here, but obviously no spring chicken. However, he did have some experience like with fencing and stuff. So he holds his own, but when you look at this duel and you compare it to the prequel stuff, I mean, this actually doesn't look as bad as I remembered. It's not too slow. Again, notice both hands on the hilt. At one point, maybe they have fixed this, but Obi-Wan's lightsaber starts to go out. Let's see if I can catch it. Like whatever the special effect, I don't know. I forget. At one point I knew how these original lightsabers worked, but it looks like they've gone back and touched them up anyway. They're way more colorful than they used to be. Here's where it starts to go out at the end. Yeah, they made it a little bit better there. Did we just leave this party?
Protect you.
We got run from old friends.
Is she all right?
Seems okay if we can get to it. Just hope we don't make the trek any more commission.
I can't imagine it'd be easy to see with that Darth Vader helmet on, though, and try to fight. It's interesting in this first film, his eyes have like a little bit of a red color to them, but then the helmet's changed in the next two, and it's more black. Uh-oh. Now, Obi-Wan wasn't originally going to die in this. And George decided later in the game that he would, because he didn't really have much else to do for the rest of the film. And Alec Guinness apparently wasn't too thrilled to hear that. I mean, I mentioned earlier that he was like super professional on the set and always positive. But that was the one time where apparently he was like, George, I don't know if I want to be a part of this if you're going to kill off my character. And George Lucas eventually convinced him. So that's good. Because they would have had to recast and reshoot a lot of stuff. Oh man, I wish I would have caught some of these earlier comments. They're pretty funny. Here, Luke is all sad and depressed about losing his mentor for the last 24 hours. Nah, kid. Dude's lost a lot of people in a short amount of time. Now my cat is scratching at the door. So while the guys go out to the guns, Leia runs to the cockpit to help Chewie fly, I guess. For those of you who haven't been to Galaxy's Edge yet, and I only went when they had the Falcon ride. I haven't been with the newer ride, the Rise of the Resistance. But when I rode the Falcon ride, they have like 6 different roles you can play when you're in the cockpit because it's a very interactive game or ride. When I went in, I knew that was an option, and I like went up to the guy. I was like, "Can I please have a pilot? Can I please have a pilot role?" And he gave me and the wife the pilot roles, and so I decided, of course, I'm going to take full advantage of this and sit in Han Solo's seat. And it was awesome. Hear me, baby, hold together. I love that the Falcon is always on fire. It's, light speed is broken. She really is a character in and of herself, the Millennium Falcon. And that's one thing cool that's been brought back in the sequel trilogy, because of course we didn't have the Falcon in the prequels because we didn't have Han. Yeah, with all this stuff, again, I think it's important to remember how revolutionary it was at the time. Like, it's still fun now in the year 2020, but nothing compared to what we have now. So you really kind of have to, like, put yourself into the shoes of a movie-going audience back then. And here's 3PO in a pile of fiery wires. All right, so they're going to go back to the actual Rebel base.
Taking an awful risk.
And this is kind of interesting because I think this is the only time that we see Han Solo in the co-pilot seat. I care. Luke, the way the two of these guys like respond and interact with Leia is fantastic. Here's another great little scene. Just these great character moments. Still a lot of spirit. Of course, Han's just doing this to mess with Luke. He's being such a troll. No, no. She's your sister, dude. She's your sister. A lot of this has been touched up for special editions and stuff. Looks pretty good, though. I forget where this stuff is shot. Mexico? Yavin 4. So this is the fourth moon of Yavin. You see this planet a lot in Rogue One. We'll watch that one together too. Promise. The pacing here kind of slows down a bit. Like you would think that she would like get. I mean, she says there's no time to explain, but you don't get the same sense of urgency that I feel like maybe you should. R2. That would be a very boring post to stand up in like a cylinder that's just the size of your legs for hours at a time. So this guy that's sitting next to Luke was supposed to be the original Wedge character. Wedge Antilles is one of those star pilots in the Rebel Alliance, right? But he was a stage actor and was so nervous for some reason on the day of the shooting. It's like the first movie he'd ever done. He was really struggling to remember his lines. He has his first line coming up here soon. That's impossible, I think, is what he says. It's coming up soon. This animation is rough. There he is. So yeah, the internet has now named that guy Fake Wedge. Because I don't think he has a real name. He got one line. I'm pretty sure all the other lines were cut from that scene, and they recast a new Wedge Antilles, and just that guy never got a name except for Fake Wedge. It's not impossible. I used to bullseye womp rats back home, like T-16. Grand Moff Tarkin. That guy has got some cheekbones, man. Luke's got it, or Han has got his cash. Han Solo's old debts, probably referring to the money that he owes Jabba the Hutt. He doesn't want him to leave. My cat is being bad. Chewie wants you to stay, Han. See, all of this stuff kind of slows down the pace a bit. We should be prepping for this battle. Sometimes I feel like Luke brings up Ben just to get attention from Leia. See how he looked at her when he was like, I only wish Ben were here. All right, so here's Biggs. So he does show up at the end of the movie. I talked about Biggs at the beginning of the movie when he was supposed to first appear and doesn't. So it is a little bit awkward that he shows up now. He's got a pretty wicked mustache. They'll never stop us. Famous last words. 100%? 100% to what, Drewby? Oh, probably the Luke Leia thing. See, yeah, 3PO and R2 have this bond, and yeah, it just sucks to see them separated in future movies. All right. Slowly but surely, go to battle. So that's the first time we ever hear a Force ghost communicate with someone. It's interesting how over time we see Force ghosts be able to reveal themselves more extensively, I guess, to people. Like in this film, Luke just hears his voice. In Empire, Luke can see Obi-Wan through the snow, kind of. And then once he gets to Dagobah, he can see him completely. Once it gets to Jedi, Return of the Jedi, Obi-Wan's a ghost. He's walking around. He's sitting on a log. And then once you get the sequel trilogy, you have these Force ghosts that are like communicating with the natural world. Like when Yoda brings down lightning on the tree, or Luke catches the lightsaber. There's the real Wedge. So a lot of this stuff, I mean, George Lucas literally started his own visual effects company because nobody wanted to tackle it, first of all, and I think since he's a perfectionist when it comes to special effects, he wasn't going to be happy with anybody else's work, and he felt like if it was his own company with his own team assembled, he would like it more. The problem was, while he was off doing principal photography in Africa and in England, his special effects dudes were stuck in LA, up in a garage in Van Nuys, and they were just making it up as they went, trying the best that they could. But I think when he got back to LA, they had finished like one or two shots, visual effects shots. So they were, thanks, Alex. Thanks for the like. They were behind on schedule, behind on money, like I said before. And so one thing that George Lucas did to help them out was that he pulled all this archive footage from World War II and gave it to the special effects guys. And that kind of worked as their animatic to like replicate that footage. And you can find all this on YouTube, but you can see like a side by side of the old war footage and the Star Wars footage of different the dogfight, the different fighters coming in and out of frame, and the gunners behind the artillery and whatnot. It's interesting. But yeah, nowadays you don't have to worry about it. But this is literally the first time that these kind of space battles have ever been done. So they were making it all up. And like the Death Star, there's some fun behind the scenes stuff where they're in the parking lot behind their production or their visual effects office, and they have a stretch of the Death Star just laid out. They're blowing stuff up in the trench. It's fun. I like it. Veda. You think it was a requirement if you're going to be one of those old rebel guys in the war room that you had to have gray hair and a cool mustache? Wedge. Wedge has a cameo in episode 9 for like 3 hot seconds, by the way. Y-Wings. There goes Vader and his TIE fighter.
Stop. Stabilize your rear deflectors. Watch for enemy fighters.
Yeah, if there was one complaint about this movie, and it's really not fair because we have a different expectation for action movies now. But I remember when I first moved out to LA, I had a friend who'd never seen any Star Wars movies. And so we started with this one. And the issue was this final act. She just found it really boring. So I think for the most part, the movie holds up, whatever that means. But you really have to, you have to be understanding that it was made 40 years ago now. Is that right? 77? Yeah. Over 40 years. Plus, I don't know that she was a big sci-fi or fantasy fan anyway, so. All right, so what else does Star Wars mean to me besides I talked about friendships and family earlier. I think the other big thing that is like a necessity for a Star Wars film is this, idea of good versus evil. And that's very clear in this original trilogy. And I think that was something that George Lucas intentionally wanted to do. In other movies, like in the sequel trilogy, they kind of play around with a little bit of the gray. Online, there's a lot of hype about a gray Jedi. What is a gray Jedi? I don't get into all that. I mean, I read a lot of the expanded universe novels growing up, but I haven't read much about the Gray Jedi. I think it's more effective um, if it's a little bit clearer. Yeah, I have a problem with The Last Jedi is that Luke became not really good or not really bad, just kind of cranky. And you also just need really cool spaceships and aliens. Escapism. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a fun movie. Star Wars is supposed to be fun. And unfortunately, we've lost a lot of that. I think we live in an internet culture right now that just loves to be outraged. I'm not saying that you have to love every new movie that comes out, but I think it's also important to understand that some people are enjoying them and having fun with them. I've also been interested by conversations happening recently that are like, well, if I don't like any of these new movies, am I still a Star Wars fan? I think if you like just one out of all of the movies, if you like just one scene from one movie and that's it, I think you're a Star Wars fan. Like if the 2008 Clone Wars full-length featured movie is your favorite and only enjoyable Star Wars movie, I'd be like, okay, cool. Because I want people to love Star Wars, even if it's that movie, which I think is the worst. I don't know if any of you have seen that one. The Clone Wars television series has some ups and downs, but that first movie that came out in 2008 is so bad. But I'm just one guy, and that's one guy's opinion. When I first saw that, I remember leaving the theater and being like, wow, if this is the direction Star Wars is going, then I guess I'm going to stop following the franchise. I would be interested to time the length of this whole space battle. Because the other interesting thing I noticed as a kid, too, was I lost track of Clone Wars movie. Yeah, it's a rough one. The Baby Hutt and Zero the Hutt, I just don't understand a lot of those choices in that movie. But yeah, as a kid, I was like, wait, why are they making this run multiple times through the Death Star trench? And I still don't know that I fully understand it, to be perfectly honest with you. It's been a while since I've watched this one. But I wonder if maybe you could eliminate one of those runs. And then like in Phantom Menace, same kind of thing with the pod race. Like you got to run the track 3 times. Like, are you really going to be able to come up with enough interesting stuff, George, to fill up 3 laps or 20 minutes? Because I feel like this last attack, this third act, is solid 20 minutes. You may fire when ready. The force is strong with this one. All these great lines. Yay, Han showed back up. I knew he would. And not just because I've seen this 500 times. And so it looks like there's only 4 ships leaving the Death Star, right? And I was always like, is that really all the rebels that survived? I feel like I remember reading in the EU that there were others that made it, but they left early or they went the other direction. I don't know. Allison, thanks for the like. Miss you, kid. Here comes our hero home, home from saving the galaxy. He will never have to worry about that again. Yeah, the camaraderie here right off the bat in the first film is just spot on. Oh, it was a little too late, I'm afraid, for the sequel trilogy with the new big three. And then the prequels. Yeah, we'll get to that later. And here is the final throne room sequence. There's a whole pretty funny video on YouTube, if you haven't seen it, where they have this scene without the John Williams music, which again just reinforces the fact that John Williams' music, I'm not going to say it saved the movie, but it made it what it is. The maestro. I kind of wish we could have seen this yellow jacket that Luke has a little bit more. All right, let's talk about the medals real quick, because Chewie's medal. Here are my thoughts on Chewie's medal. And because they finally gave him one in Rise of Skywalker, which I didn't need to have that happen, and here's why. It had been addressed several times in the EU, and I know I'm not expecting everybody to be an expanded universe fan, but in Wookiee culture, it was not. They did not like to be recognized in that way. The shiniest that 3PO will ever be. So that was one thing. And then they also addressed it again in the recent Chewbacca comic book. Final shot. Oh, well, not technically. We got to get the close-up, everybody. Yay! So yeah, Chewie actually gets a gift given to him, and it's been probably a year or two since I read the Chewbacca comic book, but he gets a medal from another friend, which kind of contradicts the whole idea that the Wookiee culture doesn't like receiving medals, but nonetheless, it is another instance where this has been addressed. And then in real life, like in the 90s, I'm pretty sure Carrie Fisher hosted the MTV Movie Awards, and Chewbacca was there, and she gave him a medal at the MTV Movie Awards. It was very strange. And so now in Rise of Skywalker, they addressed it a fourth time. Kind of silly, kind of overkill, but whatever. Guys, thanks so much, especially for those of you who might have actually sat through that whole thing. Andrew, if you were there for the whole thing, man, that's a good OT friend there for life. And when we get to sequel trilogy, though, you're not allowed. I'm going to do this again. I had fun, and I'm bored with the whole quarantine thing. So we'll do Empire Strikes Back, which is my favorite Star Wars film, soon-ish. I'm thinking, let's see, if today's Tuesday, maybe Thursday or Friday. I don't want to lose the momentum on this. Hopefully that's not too early for y'all. But remember, all this will be uploaded to YouTube. OT for life. So yeah, again, the YouTube channel is going to be called Show Me Cinema. Show Me Cinema, because I live in the Show Me state, and I want you to show me some cinema. So be looking for that. I'm definitely not going to get it uploaded tonight, but probably sometime in the morning I'll upload this one with all of its many flaws. And then as I continue to do these, so if I do Empire on Thursday and you can't catch it, you can just go on the YouTube channel whenever you want, turn on Empire, watch it, or heck, you could just listen to my ramblings as you're going throughout your day or when you go back to work. Hopefully that'll be soon for everybody, right? Please. Final thoughts. yeah, A New Hope, Star Wars 1977 really changed so much about filmmaking and skyrocketed, Harrison's career. Mark and Carey's to a certain extent. George Lucas, absolutely. Indiana Jones never would have happened if it wasn't for this. It created, the visual effects department, Industrial Light and Magic. That whole company came about because of Star Wars, Skywalker Ranch. So, yeah. Again, I would like to recommend the documentary Empire of Dreams. If you haven't watched it yet, it's 2.5 hours long. It's pretty lengthy, but if you can divide it up into chunks and knock a little bit of it out here and there, it's on Disney Plus, and it's phenomenal. All right, I think that's about all I got. Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this, everybody. I sure did. Hiccups and all. Have a great evening. Stay healthy. Stay safe. And I'll make an announcement when I decide on a time for Empire Strikes Back. Love you. I think that's about all I got. Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this, everybody. I sure did. Hiccups and all. Have a great evening. Stay healthy. Stay safe. And I'll make an announcement when I decide on the time for Empire Strikes Back. Love you. I think I got it turned off.
Okay. You should have hit end live.
I don't know why it just always goes back to my. I think that's about all I got. Live. Yeah. Hopefully you enjoyed this, everybody.
They've changed the
I
way
sure did. Hiccups and all. No, because it shows me getting up.
No, they've changed how this works.
I hit end live video.